It seems to be that in the Korean Peninsula, the drums of war are constantly rumbling. And it's certainly true that this area is not known for its peacefulness, but the kind of tension that the area has been recently feeling has not existed for some time. The United States, a country which already had 30,000 soldiers deployed in the area, has also deployed several aircraft carriers, heavy bombers, and even an advanced anti-missile system in South Korea. It is so advanced that China has even considered it a threat to their own security.
China tells US to remove anti-missile THAAD system from South Korea amid spying fears.
North Korea, on the other hand, keeps carrying out new tests with ballistic missiles and progressing with its nuclear program. It seems that North Korea doesn't really care about all the international legislation about nonproliferation and nuclear testing. Japan and South Korea are feeling understandably tense. They want to know what to do, what decisions to make step by step in order to stop the growing threat that is Kim Jong-un.
North Korea's most recent missile launch is absolutely intolerable.
We already told you in a previous video here at Visual Politik about how Japan is seriously considering putting an end to the pacifist nature of their constitution. And it seems that right now even Beijing has had enough of Pyongyang.
China reportedly sent 150,000 troops to North Korea's border.
If this story were a movie, you'd probably leave the cinema thinking that the writer had taken too much creative liberty.
Dynamic violence, savage action, spectacular thrills, Godzilla, king of the monsters.
But what is really happening in this region? What can we actually expect? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this Visual Politik video, but before we get into all of that, let's get some perspective.
Where are we, and how did we get to this situation?
North Korea is some sort of nightmare from the past. It's a country still living in the Cold War, a country with one of the most totalitarian governments in the world, and along with all of that, it's also one of the poorest countries on the planet.
According to the United Nations, 2 out of 5 North Koreans suffer from undernourishment.
But Kim Jong-un, the guy who controls the country with an iron fist, doesn't seem to give a damn about any of that. So, it is estimated that Pyongyang started to develop its nuclear program around the 1980s, and since then there have been a few key situations which have sped up this progress. The first was the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Then came George W. Bush's incorporation of North Korea into the so-called Axis of Evil in 2002, and then there was the coming to power of Kim Jong-un in 2011. We could say that every time the regime felt threatened, they decided to accelerate the process. But we're going to discuss that later in the video.
The issue is, today, it is estimated that North Korea holds from 10 to 20 nuclear weapons, and according to the RAND Corporation, if it doesn't stop producing them, the North Korean program could accumulate around 100 nuclear bombs by the year 2020.
But do wait for just a second, because this isn't the end of the story. For now, the technology used in this country is, well, it's pretty basic. It's based on old designs from the Soviet Union, so the bombs they have developed up until now, they don't work brilliantly. And that is why Pyongyang is now obsessed with two things. On the one hand, attempting to miniaturize the bombs so they can be placed in missiles. On the other hand, developing ballistic missiles capable of attacking targets that are thousands of miles away. And hey, the last tests they've conducted indicate that they are probably making some important advances. Many analysts, including the intelligence services of South Korea and the United States, have considered that North Korea is already capable of weaponizing short and mid-range missiles with nuclear warheads, which could allow them to reach South Korea and Japan. And, well, that's not all. It seems clear that if the program doesn't stop, in a few years North Korea will be capable of attacking the United States of America with ballistic missiles. This would be a significant strategic leap for North Korea. And that, dear friends, is a red line which is causing the Pentagon many, many headaches. So now you might be wondering, well, hasn't the US done anything to stop this country? And, well, the truth is that they have tried almost everything.
The US strategy.
For years, the United States and South Korea have tried to persuade Pyongyang to abandon their plan of developing nuclear weapons, and, well, they didn't have any problem taking out the checkbook in order to do this.
In the early 90s, 1994 to be specific, Bill Clinton signed the agreement framework by which North Korea committed to cancel its military plans in exchange for generous fuel help from the United States, as well as assistance to build 2 nuclear reactors for civilian use.
With this agreement, North Korea obtained the energy they needed to develop their economy. As for South Korea, besides giving a huge amount of humanitarian aid, they also committed to boost and finance North Korea's economic development programs. It all seemed to be going well for a while. However, it all fell to pieces in 2002 when George W. Bush found out that Pyongyang had been fooling them. In secret, North Korea had kept developing its nuclear programs for military purposes. After more negotiations, they reached a new agreement, and Bush's administration restarted their aid program and lifted sanctions. But a year later, Pyongyang reneged on the deal. Despite all of this, Barack Obama decided to try yet again.
In February 2012, they reached a new agreement. North Korea canceled the nuclear program, and the United States restarted, once again, the economic aid. This time, Pyongyang broke the agreement only 6 weeks later.
Alright, so now you're beginning to get the picture. So now you might be wondering, well, why are North Korea so insistent on having nuclear weapons at all?
What are each looking for?
The regime of Kim Jong-un is pretty set on developing more advanced nuclear weapons, and the international community is going to have to get used to the idea that this is not something they are going to abandon. But that still leaves us with the question of why. Well, first of all, because they think nuclear weapons are essential for their survival. Pyongyang knows that with nuclear weapons around, no foreign power, especially the United States, would dare to intervene in the country. When the United States invaded Iraq, North Korean leaders, they were paying attention. For them, the first mistake Saddam Hussein made was not having nuclear weapons and other WMDs. They thought the same thing when Gaddafi's regime fell. Libya had voluntarily cancelled its program for the development of WMDs a few years earlier. So the North Korean leadership thinks, and honestly they're probably right, that nuclear weapons are the best guarantee to staying in power. Further, the sales of nuclear weapons technology is one of the main sources of foreign currency coming into the country. Currency that's needed so the elite can maintain their standards of living. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, North Korea has become one of the main exporters of missile equipment, technology, and components.
US seizes North Korean ship taking missiles to Yemen.
Also, indications are that North Korea has sold nuclear technology to Iran and advised Syria in the construction of a nuclear reactor that Israel bombarded in 2007.
Israeli strike targeted Syrian nuclear reactor. The Telegraph.
It is precisely this risk of proliferation which is why the United States is trying so hard to stop North Korea. The other reason is, of course, to try to prevent this country from being capable of threatening the United States with a nuclear attack. And so, well, now we come to China, and what China thinks of all of this.
China.
One thing is certain. If it weren't for China's support, North Korea would have never developed its nuclear program. And it isn't just the technological part that we're talking about here, or the support to avoid international penalties. It's also the money.
China accounts for more than 90% of North Korea's total trade. Daily NK.
In other words, without the support of Beijing, this country would have collapsed a long time ago. However, there are some signs which tell us China, well, they're a bit tired of so much provocation, and they're not happy about those nuclear missiles either. It could be said that for Beijing, Pyongyang is now a burden that China has to deal with as it attempts to gain influence and leadership in international politics.
China takes the driver's seat on free trade.
Some analysts have even suggested that Beijing might be losing control over the government of Pyongyang, which is now self-absorbed by their new nuclear capability. Importantly, for the first time in November of 2006, China agreed to completely stick with the international sanctions being leveled against North Korea. Besides, in the last few months, China has forbidden North Korean coal imports and gas exports, and, well, the international community is holding its breath. That is a significant punishment for the Kim Jong-un regime. And, well, there's more. International international relations between these two countries is not at its best point. In fact, since Kim Jong-un came to power, no top-level bilateral meetings have taken place, and there are less and less official visits between the countries. So the question is Beijing really changing its relationship with Pyongyang?
A road to solution?
Well, it is still too soon to know, but don't be fooled. For the time being, China is not going to let North Korea fall, which is still an ally for them in the region. At least not until they have serious reasons to do so. And, well, that is a key point to understand if we want to find a solution to this crisis. China needs to be persuaded to try and make Pyongyang put an end to this, to cancel their nuclear program and carry out real reforms. But that won't happen under the current setup. That is why many experts think it is time for the United States to withdraw from Korea and consider dismantling the anti-missile system and perhaps consider some economic compensation as well. It is also important that China understands that the current situation might lead South Korea and Japan to pursue an arms race as well as the option of developing their own nuclear weapons. So now we've told you our opinion here at Visual Politik, and well, we'd love to know what you think. Click here if you want to leave your opinion in a quick survey. So what do you think Trump's administration should do? Do you think North Korea should put an end to its nuclear plans? Should they even possibly be threatened with war? Well, I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that subscribe button below the video and stay tuned for new videos every Monday and Thursday. And do not forget to check out Reconsider Media podcast. They actually provided the voice for this video that isn't mine. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.